Thank you so much for tuning in to Champions TV. This is Nature Talk show, a show that talks about wildlife, the birds, the marine ecosystem, some of the threats that are being faced, and what are some of the possible solutions and conservation efforts that the community can come up with. So today we are talking about riparian zones, and our guest in studio is James Kamau, who is a conservation biologist, and I'll be your host, Grace Achieng. So welcome so much, James. So just to begin with, when we are talking about riparian zones, what are these?
Riparian zones, these are the transitional zones between a river ecosystem and the major land. This is the land that is just adjacent to the river. From the shore to the other land, it's considered to be about 6 meters to the land. Also, a riparian zone that holds water, like a swamp, is what we know as a wetland area.
Is there a difference between the riparian zones and the wetlands?
No, there is a difference. Now, a riparian zone is any zone that is 6 meters from the shore of a river into the land. But a riparian zones that holds water for a long time, is what we consider to be a wetland area. So there is no major difference that a wetland area is a riparian zone that holds water.
Now, these riparian zones, do they have importance to the ecosystem?
Actually, wetland areas and riparian zones are considered to be very, very, very important parts of the biomes. This is because they hold water. Water is a very essential thing when it comes to land, to life, and the environment in general. Riparian zones are also important because they are habitats. They are habitats to major birds in Kenya, major animals. We have the pelican. For example, in Lake Elementaita, the riparian zone in Lake Elementaita is the breeding ground of the pelican bird. So destruction of such areas may lead to extinction of such birds. Yeah. Riparian zones, like the vegetations found in the riparian zones, like the papyrus, around the shores of the rivers, that's where you find most fish species breed and hide. So destruction of these areas is very, very, very dangerous to our ecosystem and also our major biodiversity.
So you have said that wetlands is home to, it offers habitat to various wildlife.
Yes.
What are some of the examples of this wildlife?
Wildlife we find in these areas, like in rivers in Kenya, we have fish like the trout, which is a major inhabitant of the river ecosystem. We also have plants that are found near the rivers and lakes, like, let's say, for example, the yellow-backed acacia, the ones that is dying in Nakuru due to excess water. It's also found in Lake Elementaita, Lake Naivasha. We have a lot of plants that are found along the river banks. These are some of the life that actually depend on the river ecosystems, and most of them are found in the riparian zones.
Mm-hmm. What about animals? Wild
animals. In wild animals, we can take, for example, in Lake Nakuru, we have the rhino, the black rhino, which stays around the lake. This is where they get their food and support. In forms of birds, we have the pelicans, the flamingos. We also have Coelea, which builds their nest around the riverbanks. We also have kingfisher, which fishes inside the rivers and the lakes, but lives along the river ecosystem.
And currently, we are really experiencing so much floods.
Yes.
And it's because of destruction of riparian zones.
Yes.
How can you justify this statement?
Now, when you have a river ecosystem may be big or small. Now, depending on the river ecosystem, we will get the distance, the riparian zone, that is the distance between the transitional zone between the river ecosystem and the land. The riparian zones are supposed to hold water in excess when in situations of floods. Yeah. But now you have a situation where most people have reclaimed this land for agriculture. This is because fertile soil is carried from highlands to the river and it is deposited on the banks of the river banks. That is the riparian zones. Yeah, when the soil is deposited there, people have taken advantage of this and reclaimed the riparian zones in terms of agriculture. Yeah, you find that they've planted maize, beans, and everything that they plant. Now, when the rains are in high amount, the river ecosystem cannot hold the water. That's why the outflow or a lot of the excess water should flow back to the riparian zones. Now, the excess water destroys the crops, and in other cases where the riparian zones have been reclaimed to support buildings, construction of buildings, like you see in Kenya, that's why you find that the excess water destroys the buildings. So it is what we call floods, facing floods, should actually be controlled by the riparian zones. But due to our encroachment into the riparian zones, that's why we are facing these more effects of floods, like destruction of crops, destruction of buildings and such.
And you are a conservation biologist, so that means you're really concentrating on conserving the environment at large.
Yes.
Now, what is your view about what people think of the riparian zones?
What I think is that most people in Kenya do not know the importance of riparian zones. They actually even don't know what the riparian zones are. That's why you have many conservation biologists, many NGOs deeply investing into awareness programs, education, because most people don't know it. And the people who know the importance of the riparian zones are not actually conserving them, they're taking advantage of them. Yeah, like the farmers who reclaim the riparian zones because of the fertile silt that has been deposited there. They know it's wrong to do it, but they continue doing it, and that's why we have many people being affected by such floods and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the threats that these riparian zones are facing?
Currently, the riparian zones will face a lot of challenges due to deforestation. Why am I saying this? When you cut the trees, even in the catchment areas, that is the forest ecosystem or mountain ecosystem, that means that there is a lot of erosion and a lot of silt will be deposited there. So meaning that when the river ecosystem has a lot of silt in it, the water has to flow outside. That's why most of the riparian zones we have in Kenya are covered by water actually, because of the excess silt in the water. Thus the water level has to flow. The other problem we have in these areas is actually pollution in that many counties or many towns in Kenya, namely Nakuru, Naivasha, do not have a good sewage channel. Yeah, that's where most of the waste in towns like this is deposited into rivers, lakes and such. That pollution has affected greatly the riparian zones. Most of the construction areas in Kenya these days actually is done in riparian zones because the land is cheaper and easily accessible to the rich. That's why you find it's a very human activity is one of the biggest threats we have to our riparian zones. Yeah.
Okay, and what about issues of grazing?
Grazing, I will not classify that as a major challenge, because grazing, water, animals have to drink water. We can have, like for example, in Lake Nakuru, we have a lot of rhinos, we have a lot of buffaloes. They feed there, they live there. But when you consider the impact they have, the buffaloes and rhinos have, it's the same impact that the grazing animals will have. But human encroachment and other activities, mostly agriculture and development of infrastructure, is what is happening to this. Because I believe a cow will come drink water in the stream and eat the animals there, then leave. The only pollution that an animal like a cow can put in these areas is maybe the defecation, the feces and everything which is manure. So I will not classify it as a major problem, but I'll just classify it as a pollution, because when the animals come to these places, they starve the water. Stirring up the water causes the pollution of the water. When they defecate in the water, they cause pollution. They cause pollution of water. Yeah.
So in your opinion, construction and pollution are the major threats as far as the riparian zones are concerned?
Yes, and agriculture also.
Okay, so and now what about the issue of, what are some of the things that can be done in order to ensure that the threats are reduced?
Number one thing is the major thing that everybody needs is education. Education has to be done. We have to create awareness and major awareness about our natural ecosystem. Not only the riparian zones, but also our wild animals, our forest ecosystem, our oceans, also our mangrove coral reefs. We have to create a lot of awareness because most of the communities living around these areas and most of the community that depend fully on these areas are not aware of the importances. The people who are aware of the importances are in offices, yeah? So we should go back to our community and educate them on the importances, because the community living around such areas are actually the protectors of such areas. And when they see activities like agricultural activities taking places in the riparian zones, they can prevent them. Activities like building of buildings and development along the riparian zones, they can also prevent such. So awareness is one of the topmost. Number two, is what is happening in Kenya right now. Government involvement in such activities. We see in Kenya right now that there is a destruction of buildings, major malls, e.g. the UK malls that are constructed in such areas. When we have government support, everything can happen actually in protecting and also reversing what has already been done by people who have built their buildings in such areas, and also agriculture, practicing agriculture in riparian zones. Yeah.
Thank you so much for staying tuned to Champions TV. We are taking a short break and see you after the break.